Start the recording now. And make sure it is recorded.
You want me to help you admit people?
Oh, would you, Cheryl? That'd be great.
Sure.
I'm just making sure the recording, does it
Yeah,
show recording on you all?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's program. We will be starting in just a moment. Thank you for joining us. You are muted. You can mute or unmute yourself by pressing *6. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's program. My name is Colleen Stovall, and I'm the Director of Programs and Events for the Miami Center for Architecture and Design. I'd like to welcome you to the first in a series of discussions under the title Urban Redesign, with a question mark. Today's topic is cities. Today's event is co-hosted by the APA Gold Coast section. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this presentation, and please feel free to submit your questions at any time addressed to everyone via the chat feature on Zoom. And if you look towards the bottom of your screen, the chat feature should pop up for you. We will answer all questions towards the end of the town hall. Please remember to keep yourselves muted and turn off your video. This saves us on bandwidth and gives us a smoother presentation. This meeting will be recorded and will be available on the MCAD website next week. Now, I'd like to introduce MCAD's immediate past president, Nati Soto.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The Miami Center for Architecture and Design is the place for everyone interested in design and the built environment. We have a community meeting space and educational programs. We run exhibits, and we also conduct, not during this time of COVID, but typically, we conduct tours of downtown Miami that highlight the richness of our urban center, where the city of Miami actually started. I encourage you to look at our website, to get engaged with our programs. It's a very rich environment, a very diverse group of people that participate every day. I am still involved, even as past president, because Cheryl won't let me go away, but also because it's a really exciting place and opportunity to connect with the environment. I encourage you all, please, to remember that we are a 501c3 organization. What that means is that we're a foundation that relies on the support and patronage of those that agree with our mission, that architecture is important to everyday communities and to the health of our cities. So I encourage you to please be generous and donate both corporately and personally to the mission through our website, right, Cheryl? And
Yes.
again, stay engaged, participate, and think about us when you want to support a great cause. Thank you.
Thanks, Nati. Hi, everybody. I'm Cheryl Jacobs, Executive Vice President here at the Miami Center for Architecture and Design, and also at AIA Miami. And I'm excited to partner with APA, the Gold Coast section of APA here in Miami for a series on urban redesign. Cities, our next one will be parks, urban parks and public spaces, and we'll also be doing one on mobility. And I'm sure we'll come up with other programs down the road that we can collaborate on. I'm all about that. Please keep an eye out, and if you're not on our mailing list, let us know, and we'll add you, or you can go to our website, miamicad.org, and sign up. Every Wednesday, we've been sending out the Miami or the MCAD survival guide with kind of lighthearted tips and information about the pandemic and all of our social distancing, although, you know, hopefully that's not going to go on forever, but we'll keep the newsletter going with other information. I want to let you know that on Tuesday at 7, we're going live on Instagram with Miami DDA, downtown MIA, their site, their Instagram. And we're going to do an exhibition tour, and we'll have on one of the curators from Articruz in Panama at the same time, so that's going to be really exciting. We'll have our 3rd Urban Warriors this year, but online, so stay tuned for that. And if you think of programs that you'd like us to do, ideas, please reach out and let us know. We want to be here for you, and if there are things that we can help you with, please reach out to me. We're happy to do that. So I'm going to bring in first the chair of the APA Gold Coast section, Juan Mullerat. Juan is the principal at Plusurbia Design, in addition to his work with APA. Juan?
Thank you, Cheryl. Good morning, everybody. My name is Juan Mullerat. I'm the principal of Plusurbia, as Cheryl mentioned, and the current chair for the APA Florida's Gold Coast section. The APA is the American Planning Association, for those of you that don't know, and we provide leadership and development of vital communities for all by advocating excellence in planning and promoting education and resident empowerment. We also provide our members with the tools and support necessary to ethically meet the challenges of growth and change. We have over 40,000 members in 90 different countries, with 200 of us being in our section in South Florida. We welcome you to look us up. Our website, the website for our chapter is, you can find it through our Florida chapter website, which is florida.planning.org. And that's our intro for the APA. We're very, very pleased to partner on many things, amongst them this event. I'd also like to announce that on the 19th at 12:30, we have a legislative webinar with one of our board members, Alex David, who is very well versed on all things legislative related to architecture and planning in the state of Florida. So we welcome you for that. Thank you, Cheryl.
Great, thanks, Juan. And let me bring in the rest of our panel. Tony Garcia, principal of the Street Plans Collaborative. Hi, Tony.
Hi.
And Cesar Garcia-Pons, principal, Garcia-Pons and Associates, and he's also a director of the APA chapter here in Miami. So welcome, guys. So let me kick this off by saying, first and foremost, since this is we've been doing AIA programming ever since the beginning of the pandemic, but this is really our first MCAD program. And I just wanted to see, first and foremost, how each of you are doing and how your firms are doing. So Juan, why don't we start with you?
Right, so I'll break the ice. We're doing well, thank you. We are still working remotely. And I think that we will continue working remotely until there is not just a feeling of physical safety, but also mental safety. I think that we are all now during this pandemic very mentally aware and somewhat wary of being around people. In fact, my 2-year-old, every time we go for a walk, he just points at people and goes, people, people, people. So I think that there's he's surprised by seeing people, and I think that's extremely sad. It's funny, but it's very sad that even kids 2 years old, they realize that we are in a different situation. The one thing that we're doing to keep everybody sort of sane, we have what we call DRMs, daily remote meetings. Always my first question is, are you safe? Are you healthy? And everybody for now has been, and everybody is keeping a good sense of humor about the situation that we live in. From a studio perspective, of course, the biggest problem is for our professions, both architecture and planning, is not being in a studio environment, and that we can work remotely all we want, but there's that studio feel, right, that we got ingrained during school, right, when we were like pulling all-nighters because our studio professors were just driving us nuts, right, and we were trying to get that project out. And ever since we were in school, we were pulling all-nighters with people. And our professions are very sociable, right, and we need community engagement. So that's probably the biggest issue from a business and from a studio environment perspective.
Yeah.
Tony?
Oh, I was just going to say, at least we're all doing well, health-wise. Mental health-wise, I feel like it's taking its toll, and the constant news is, I'm sure everybody feels this. And then now with the protests and everything, it's another news cycle that's very stressful. My staff who are younger, who have roommates who live in studios, that's a really tough environment to be in when you're working and you have to take Zoom calls 24/7. And we were talking about this earlier, Cheryl, how it's almost like the work has expanded. Like I'm working, I always work late, but I'm working much later than I ever did before. And I don't have to commute to the office. So it's like the burnout, the fear of burnout and the actual burning out is happening now.
Yeah.
Vacation.
We have to figure out how to balance that.
Totally. But actually just today I went to the office to open it up just to check it out. And one of my staff members was there. So, we'll figure it out. I feel like Juan's firm also, like we have people that are satellite locations. So we already had the distance working thing going for us. We travel so extensively that we have to rely on that, but we do miss reconvening. At a certain point, we have to come back to the office and see each other. And I think from our point of view, most of you know, or many of you know, that half of our work is planning. So we're like, working on master plans, but we actually go out and build things with the community. There's no way to distance that. We actually have to do that. So at this point, when the economy is opening up and things are happening, we're going to have to start traveling around. And I'm nervous about that. I've already told my staff, if you don't feel comfortable traveling, tell us. But so far what I'm hearing is people are saying, I want to get out of the house. I got to get out of here. I'm not afraid of flying. I'm not afraid of taking the road trip. We have projects in California that we have to go and do this work. There's no way of doing what we do distance.
Remotely, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to figure it out.
I think we're all in that mode, right? Cesar?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Juan and Tony. We've been very decentralized since I opened up my shop. We're all in different locations anyway. We have a shared workspace downtown, which none of us are visiting or sharing with anybody else because they're closed. But we've been able to continue almost exactly as we were before. Instead of working from home a couple, 3 days a week, now it's 5, 6 days a week. As Tony mentioned, there's a blur between the weekend and the weekdays. I think the same as Tony, a lot of my work is public facing, and Juan's as well. And I think what's the two most difficult things for me now, or for us, are, one is engaging with the public. I realized that I've been in the profession for 30 years, which is a long time. And I am used to doing things in front of people with people and, you know,
Right.
doing it face to face to read the room, read the conversation, really
Totally.
understand what people are talking about. And I can't do that now. And I'm finding that I can't translate that skill to Zoom. So I know that some people are, some of us aren't professional, and I'll call them out. Victor Dover is doing an amazing job right now, trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to do that public involvement over this platform and other platforms. And I think he's doing a fantastic job. The other thing I miss is the studio bit of it. Is it takes much longer now to express an idea. Before I would sit down, I would spend 4 minutes drawing something and it would be communicated. Now it doesn't happen that way. Now you draw it, you send it, you have a conversation about it, you send it back, and you don't have the immediate response. So things are taking longer, and not just longer. There's, as we all mentioned, it's just less pleasurable. I think we all got into this business for the camaraderie of this business,
Right.
and although I do like the quiet of a home office, I do miss the face-to-face interaction with my staff and
Yeah.
colleagues.
That's
Well,
because that's because you have no kids, man.
I was
That's
just thinking that. I was
super
like,
quiet,
what
except for the
quiet?
leaf blowers. I'm fine.
What quiet?
No,
You know, the other thing is about the Zoom platform. I find it hasn't been that bad in terms of some public outreach efforts, and I think long term our profession is going to change. The budgets are going to get smaller for some types of outreach, but there's no way of doing collaborative drawing, like you're saying. You know, how are we doing a workshop? We call some of these things workshop, and I've seen, you know, like Victor's work and others, but the workshop element is working with the public to draw something. This platform or no other platform that I've seen has that functionality yet. So we can see each other, we can talk to each other, we can chat, but the draw is not there.
I think there's another element to this which we haven't touched on yet, but that's something that was brought up to me when we were doing hearings, and it's the question of equity through this platform. Not everybody has access to the internet, and especially with what's happening today, we need to be very conscious. You know, whether we work in public or private sector, we're working for the public, right? We are public servants,
Right.
And Zoom is not available to everybody.
Right.
And so we're very fortunate that we have this tool, and that it's evolving. I think that we are 20 years ahead. Because of the pandemic, I think that we are 20 years ahead of what we would have been through technology. But who is left behind? Who doesn't have access to this? Who are we not reaching out to? And what do we need to do to reach out to those people that don't have access or that are being left behind? This is our questions that, especially, you know, because of what's going on right now, and not just the pandemic, we need to stay very focused and very aware of who is being left behind.
Totally. I feel like it's actually accentuated those patterns that were already there before. I don't feel like the makeup of those meetings hasn't changed so much, but the fact that now we realize there's a whole segment of the population that can't be involved in those conversations is bringing it to light. I think that's a really important point.
Well, and let's hope that, you know, that while I think how we all work is going to change forever, we're not going to be separated forever. At some point, you know, we'll figure this out. So let me go to, you know, based on that, Tony, what are you hearing from your clients? What are they asking for, and how are your projects moving forward?
Well, actually, you know, for some of you who know our background and our work, half of our work is tactical urbanism, which is about flexible, short-term, low-cost materials and using those to change the public spaces and our streets. And I think now more than ever, cities are realizing that they need that. And so in the last month, I mean, it's just been crazy. The number of clients who are calling us and cities saying, we don't really know how to do this. We don't have the tools. We're not equipped to be flexible, to be fast, to deploy traffic control in the way that we should have been trained for the past 10 years. And we've been talking about this since 2008. And it's come full circle for us, I think. So our projects are less about what's the master plan look like, and it's more about what are we doing in the next 3 weeks, 2 months, and then how do we move beyond that? How do we go from laying out cones to expand our sidewalks and open our streets to people biking and walking, how do we change that to something longer term? We don't know how long this is going to go on. And, just in a practical way, I've been talking to folks from the DDA about this and other cities locally. Renting traffic control equipment for the next 2 months is going to be hugely expensive. So that's not realistic. You're not going to spend $100,000 on traffic control that just goes away. You're better off just buying those materials. So what happens next? There is a little bit of planning that goes into that. And those are the conversations that were happening. Like immediate response, and then 2 months from now, where do we go from here?
Juan, do you have you look like you're kind of nodding. Do you have a?
Well, we both Tony's practice and mine are work in parallel in many ways, and we are noticing the same thing. Our practice is less about tactical urbanism, and we do a lot of master planning with private and public sector work. And I'm seeing from my clients a very diverse reaction to the current situation. Some of our private clients are absolutely scared of what's coming and what's happened. Right. Others are, are taking this opportunity. This is like, what's happening right now, especially from the client perspective, is the economics, right? So some clients are taking the opportunity because they're waiting for just the real estate to go down and then buy property and do large master planning projects, and others are not. From the public sector is also varied. Some projects have been put on hold because their priority is the current pandemic. And they see, for instance, in Miami, generally, they see that sea level rise and resilience or climate-related resilience is now not a priority, which we could debate for hours.
Right.
I would find many different opinions. But now there's another priority, and the current pandemic, of course, has turned or has informed further what resiliency means, right? Right. In fact, we're writing a couple of comprehensive plans, and our health chapter is a lot longer now than it was, a few months ago. Mm-hmm. So from the public and private, I'm seeing, a variety of approaches to the current situation.
So, and I'll add to that I think we, for the most part, probably everybody in this call, and at least from the professional side, our work has already been funded on the business side, right? Like our budget's already set. Those are grant funded projects, or that money has already been allocated. But we're going to see an impact second quarter of next year. When you start, the cities are going to start realizing they don't have enough money because they just lost 3 months worth of sales tax and tourist tax and
right.
tax, whatever it is.
So, Cesar, I know this is something that everybody is talking about, and what are some things that you've been discussing that that cities can do to address some of this social distancing?
So it's about timing. I think to sort of answer the bit of the last question is, all my clients, they want to go faster. Everybody wants to do things faster now that we're in this situation with the pandemic. Everybody wants to speed up and take the opportunity.
You froze. So we may have to let Cesar unfreeze. Oh, there, you're back.
You froze a second there.
No, sorry about that. It must be internet connection.
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to answer that question because I'd rather you answer it first. So don't get cut off again.
Did you freeze again?
Oh dear.
Oh God. Okay. So we are freezing a little bit on and off. This is one of the side effects of this. Let's give it a shot again, Cesar, and see if you can go. You want to try?
There are a couple of things that we have been doing. Are people moving?
Go.
Yes, we're here.
Okay,
We hear
got it.
you. We hear you.
So
Here go. Here go.
there's two things. One is, I think, to answer a little bit, my previous clients, they want to take this opportunity to move more quickly now. I think the opportunity is, let's move faster. And I think that is part of what we can do to adapt to the situation. Is big picture stuff is we need to move faster. You know, Tony mentioned it, that, you know, he's working on projects that to do the tactical urbanism is we'd have to spend an inordinate amount of money to do small changes today, when we've already designed these projects 20 years ago, 10 years ago. These planning projects and urban impact, projects have been designed in either master plans or in further implementation plans, and they just haven't been built. So if we would be able to have been built the projects that have been in the books forever about our public realm and our public spaces, we would not be facing this critical issue today. So, you know, my big picture thought is we can't wait. You know, as planners, we're very patient because everything we do takes a long, long time. But I think we need to be more active in implementing not just what Tony does and say, hey, look, here is the short-term solution to the long-term solution. It's let's get those long-term solutions that we know we must do implemented, because then we wouldn't be facing these emergency elements right now. To answer your question more directly is, we need to be able to utilize our public spaces as limited as they are, because again, we already know how to do it better. But for right now, I would focus our energy on masks, right? Because I think the science is now social distancing works, but it's really through the spread of droplets from the mouth that make a difference, and less about touching things. And really just go back to utilizing the newfound ability to work from home, and lessen the percentage of people working in one particular place, like the mega city that we live in Miami, and being able to redistribute or decentralize those uses a little bit, so that you have fewer people in more places versus more people in fewer places. I think that would be what we should be working on, is one, for right now, masks, but really think about the decentralization of our urban areas, so that we're not talking about one mega area, which we do have and we're thankful to have, but really creating what we are already doing, downtown Dadeland, downtown Doral, downtown South Miami, is really creating smaller pockets where people can decentralize a little bit and still get the social aspect and still do the business we need to do, but we don't have to do it all together in the exact same place at the exact same time.
I know that in some of the work that we have been doing with Active Design Miami and working with the University of Miami, at some of the studies that they've done showing how negative isolation can be for people. And if they don't, so here on the one hand, we're looking at how do we separate people, but on the other hand, it's not as healthy. So what are you guys talking about in terms of the cities, like what, in addition or in agreement to what Cesar was saying, what are things that can be done now? Juan, you want to, or Tony, either one, you want to take?
Tony, you want to take it on, or?
Sure.
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, thinking about our streets, they represent 30% of the public space in the city. Public space, not used as public space. And that has been the biggest repository of projects right now. And the way that cities can really adapt to this moment is think about our streets as public spaces. It's important that we realize that our 5-foot sidewalks are not going to cut it. Our transit is going to be stressed to the limit. And one of the things I actually didn't mention earlier was that my staff, I'm the only one who has a car in my office. Everybody else arrives by transit. And this is going to have a huge impact on them. They're all afraid of taking transit. My office is not close enough to bike, or they don't necessarily feel comfortable biking. So now they're all talking about carpooling and driving in. And to me, that is going to be a huge impact. You see cities all around the world, like Paris, basically is going to do 100 kilometers of bikeways that parallel the the transit system because they realize transit capacity is going to be down to 25%. And so you need your streets to act as not only transportation, but as public space. And that means closing the streets to cars, closing your neighborhood streets to be for local traffic only. That's something called slow streets. We don't have any of that here in South Florida, but it's a very common thing. The city of Oakland was the first one to do this. They decided they were going to implement their bicycle master plan with slow streets. Denver also did it. And it's just laying out cones or barriers, signage that says, this is local traffic only. And people just walk and bike in the streets so that they're not crowding on the sidewalks. I think that's where we're at right now. Also, on-street parking. On-street parking is going to be useless for stores and for businesses if they go out of business because the capacity is so low. And right now, I'm sorry to take up so much time, but this is something that I'm very
No, go. Right.
This has just released some regulations for sidewalk cafes and dining in the street, and they're working through the kinks. It's making its way through the process, but that information really needs to get out there because we're going to see a massive closing of restaurants in this town. No restaurant's going to be able to survive on 50% capacity when there is space on the street in the form of on-street parking and the street itself for them to spread out the way that other cities are doing. We need to expand this and accelerate that program as much as possible.
Juan?
I can only echo what my other two panelists have said. I think that there is a need, and Tony, you mentioned Paris. You're mentioning big cities, and I think that is important to also note. I've going back to what are my clients saying. I've actually had a couple of visits from clients in Central Florida because they are seeing a potential migration happening to smaller cities.
Totally.
In fact, there's a couple of articles, a couple of studies that show that 1 in 4 Americans would rather stay working remotely, which means that it gives us a lot more freedom. So I don't want everybody in this webinar to feel like, oh, Miami is doomed. No, Miami is not doomed, and neither are the very large cities, but we have to start considering that there's density and there's hyperdensity. And depending on how, as Tony was mentioning, how we work with our open space. And not just that, one of the things that our studio is looking at is the interface between the streets and the buildings, right? The interface between those two is key.
Right.
Now, and that's in all the cities. Miami, I would argue, has an advantage, especially commercially, because we have probably the quintessential and probably the only, we are the only city that has a culture for what I call the pedestrian walkthrough, which is La Ventanita.
La Ventanita.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
we need to learn from La Ventanita because we need to provide better and wider sidewalks, as Tony mentioned. But that interface of architecture and urban design, right? That's very, very important. So La Ventanita, I think it's something that we start learning. There's also, and I read a great article from, I think it was the AIA website actually, and they were talking about the vestibule, right, for residential buildings, and how the vestibule becomes a space, an interstitial space between the public realm and the private realm, right? One of the things that we have worked now a couple of years ago was heavily was Little Havana, and one of the things that we learned was that, all the solutions were there, we just had to find them. And in the 1920s, the way that buildings were built with cross ventilation, things like that, 3 stories, so you don't need an elevator. I have an employee who lives in one of the high rises in downtown. And before, we actually dragged her out of the apartment, she spent almost 3 months, 2.5 months without coming out, right? She stayed there. She was not afraid of being in the street. She was afraid of getting in the elevator.
Right.
Because the stairs were locked. Think about that, right? The stairs were locked and she was fearful of being 2 feet away from another person in an elevator. So I think that building typologies need to change. Cities, especially large ones with hyperdensity, need to start adapting. Our zoning codes need to start considering how the missing middle, how the mid-rises and low-rises can provide these solutions. And it is another thing that, and I'll leave it at that. I think that the 3 of us have spent more time on this question than any other question because we're extremely passionate. It's another thing that I was talking to my wife about, who's also an urbanist and a planner. And we were talking about how this pandemic is going to start changing the way that we build our social relationships. When you live in a high rise, you rarely know your neighbors, especially not upstairs and downstairs, right? Because the high rise, that's a high rise culture. In a 2 and 3 story building apartment, you create that that smaller community. So you've got your neighborhood, you've got your block, you've got your building, and then you've got your family unit, right? But that building community, that community that lives within your building, if you are in a hyperdense typology or in a neighborhood that is hyperdense, that has high rises, you're not gonna have that. And that is a very important, it's a very important scale to think about when we think about pandemics and when we think about the health of a community, not just physical, but mentally. We also can start managing in the future how health is tackled, how quarantine happens. You know, we can't quarantine Brickell, right? Again, I mean, the economic impact of this, you know, if we can start looking at urbanism and planning and zoning and city building in incremental scales, we will be able to narrow down and protect the citizens in a much more surgical way, let's say.
Right.
I'll leave it at that. I know I could go on for hours on this.
Yeah, and actually there's such a huge, that's a subject for a whole other webinar, Cheryl, is that how previous pandemics have shaped urban plans and cities, you know, the Black Death or the cholera epidemics. Like, that to me is fascinating. I don't want to add any more to it, but I think there's a lot there to what Juan was saying.
Well, we actually, when we started working on our active design projects, that was some of the research and thinking that we did. So, Cesar, how are you looking at, you know, I think some of the hardest things is to make cities, to make the public realm change and look at things differently. And how do you think that you are going to maybe adapt in how you deal with your clients to bring about some of this change?
So I think that's what I do every day. I mean, I think all of us do that every day, unless I'm mishearing the question is, you know, the three of us, and you know, I was able to look at the list of the people on the call, many of us on this call, a lot of what we do is how do we convince people who may not be aware of what we believe public space should be and cities should be, to what it should be. Because one of my fears, and I think it was shared by some of the panelists already, is the going back to normal. Is, you know, thankfully as a human species, we have an incredibly short memory because we can continue to move on and plow through. But there are, most people outside of this call do not understand the relationship between an infrastructure project and the community space that it can create. People not on this call really don't understand that streets are public spaces. And, you know, we say this as introductories at all of our workshops is, you know, streets are public spaces for people, not for automobiles. And how do we do that? I think we need to continue to do what we do. As professionals, I think I find I've had to work around the margins with my clients, as I'm sure my colleagues have had to too, which is just do the right thing, even if you don't tell your clients what that right thing is, because, you know, they may not see the benefit of it, although you know for a fact it's going to benefit everybody, which is our charge, is to work for the public good. I think one of the things in particular that I think this time is going to help us with, and I hate saying things about how this is going to help us move forward, is we can point to specific a moment in time where we can say, when this happened, this was the result, as opposed to telling clients, hey, you know, we need more than 5 feet because it's not enough for people to walk down the sidewalk. And they'll just say, well, it's fine. And then you can say, well, what about pandemic? And they remember this time and they understand that there's a moment in time that we can utilize the lessons from this particular time in order to push forward the elements of things that we were already trying to do. I think one in particular, I'll pass it along, is particularly with projects and infrastructure, and again, the three of us on the panel work in infrastructure projects, is our clients are focused on whatever infrastructure project we're working on, and less so about the influence of that infrastructure project on the greater public. And although, like I said, I try to do the right thing regardless of whether my client knows it or not, I need to spend more time, I believe, educating my clients so that when they get to the next project and neither Juan, Tony, or I are in the room, they're still going to do the right thing. So I think that's part of all of our jobs on this call, is to make sure that we're all educated and to educate as many people as possible as to what we all, I think, believe is the right thing.
Cesar, I'd like to just bring up the going back to normal, right? And you said, you know, I hate talking about how we're going to move forward, or no, you didn't say it like that, but you said something like, you know, but we have to, and honestly, I truly hope we don't go back to normal, because this is an opportunity to improve. And I, you know, and I know a lot of the people that are listening right now. I'll say something that I'm going to get stones thrown at me. I miss traffic. I miss traffic. I miss traffic because traffic is the one thing that rallied people behind a cause, right? So, and traffic is something that was visual. We saw it, right? And it was there. The pandemic, we cannot see it, right? We cannot see the sickness, and we cannot see, you know, the issue that we have at hand because it's invisible, and it actually pulls people apart. There's a fear of going into these public spaces. There's a fear of going into the street. Before that, I had a fear of getting run over, but I saw the car coming. Right? So it was clear. So I don't want traffic. Okay. The traffic that I want is the pedestrian traffic. Like I told a traffic engineer once, congestion is good when you have people without cars, right? The steel boxes, right? But so I don't want to go back to normal. I want to take what we learned from traffic, from, you know, the pedestrian and bicycle deaths, and the, you know, the percentages of infrastructure that are devoted to pedestrian and to non-motorized versus the billions and billions of dollars that are devoted to car infrastructure. And I want to see that, improve on that, take the coronavirus, the invisible, you know, killer today, and what are we going to do about it? I don't want to go back to normal. I really don't. I also think that, you know, working remotely has taught us from a technological standpoint and also from a social standpoint how to interact with one another while being apart. I don't want to lose that because it's making us very efficient in many ways. So going back to normal is something that I always fear. And I also hate, and I'll say it, I know that you guys have heard this before, but I also hate the word or the term social distancing. It's physical distancing. Totally. Because now, and I know now it sounds also cliche, but now is the time just to bring people back together, because we are just, you know, craving to be among other people.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's difficult. And for urban planners, when we say we need to get together, we need to bring the public out, we need to do outreach, we need to have people come to our meetings. And people are like, oh my God, I'm not getting close to anybody else. I don't know where they've been. So these are the two things that I am constantly thinking about, and how we're going to move forward. Who are we going to be after this? I do not want to go back to normal.
Well, I think we have to create, as you know, it's been said a zillion times, but we have to create a new normal. And I want to take some time now. We have a little bit of time to take some questions from the group, and I'm looking at the chat, and I see a question that was actually, you took the words out of my mouth, Nati. She'd like to know how you see it possible to influence, and she put in parens, manipulate public policy so that the good thing to do becomes the norm. Tony, you want to address
I'll
that?
take that. Yeah, I think it starts, and it actually follows exactly from what Juan and Cesar were just saying about what happens next and what happens right now and how cities respond can be the start of flexing that muscle and learning these things that should be commonplace and normal, and things like wider sidewalks or streets that act as public spaces or using the ventanita. These are things that are already, they should already be doing. And I'm going to look outside of Miami as a bubble. Like, cities are doing this. They're flexing the short-term muscle. That's going to translate into a longer-term policy change. It's going to naturally do that. And it follows again from what Juan was just saying. Think about the last 3 months and the number of people that you've seen walking and biking outside of your window, wherever you live. It's going to be double, triple, more than you've ever seen, ever. And I don't think that's just because of the pandemic. I think people are realizing this is a good thing. I think there was a stat that that the Underline released of their data, or maybe it was Colin Worth, that they saw like a 200% increase in volumes of people using the Underline. Like, that is huge. So I don't ever want to hear again in Miami that it is too hot or that it rains and that people are not going to walk or bike here, because it's simply not true. We have had a proof of concept for the past 3 months that people want to get out, and if we give them the streets, and the buried lead that I didn't say was that traffic is down 70%. So people feel comfortable walking in the street, and they feel comfortable riding and biking around, and that's the real story.
So Tony, your office has done two things that I have on my radar. One, you are recording what other cities around the world are doing in terms of opening pedestrian. That's an important one. And for whoever is listening, I don't know if you guys have it online, but you should put it on your website. The second thing that you guys have done is partner with NACTO to come up with COVID solutions. Again, whoever's hasn't seen it in this thing, you should go, I don't know, Tony, give a website.
It's on our website, yeah.
All right, so it's on your website.
Tony, we'll post that when we post the recording of the program.
Good, because I think, something that has been understated in Tony's intro is that Tony's studio is at the forefront of tactical, I was gonna say nation, but I think it's international. How do we take tactical and convince our, not just our, but convince in general, the public officials and the public, because there's a lot of people that, including myself, I like to drive, that we're taking lanes away. And how do we make those permanent? And I think that, I'm going back to I do not want to go back to normal. So how do we take this opportunity to maybe do tactical, but move into the permanent?
Right.
That to me is a question that I should have called you before the thing, but I'm going to put you on the spot and let
me on the spot. So, I mean, the first answer is it takes political leadership. There's no other way around it. There needs to be somebody at the very highest level that says, this is our policy, this is what we're doing, and it trickles down from there. And there also has to be a groundswell of people at the bottom level that are doing it, that want this to happen. And we have a lot of that here. A lot of the cities that we saw and that we've seen over the last 3 months that are doing this, they're just people that are going out and closing their streets. They're figuring out ways of blocking their streets, and they're closing them. So that's that DIY method. But when it comes to a city like Paris or Oakland or even smaller cities all across the country, it's the political leadership and where their values are from the get-go. They have to realize that this is that moment.
Well, it's not just in terms of the political leadership, it's also us, not just you telling your client, but the people letting them know that this is an issue that's important and letting them know when they vote. Cesar, I think you wanted to, one thing quickly, I see here, Bernard, hi Bernard, he said the term should have been physical distancing.
Correct. Yeah,
which it actually means instead of social distancing, and that's absolutely
using that term
true.
In the West Coast, thankfully, in California. So, but to answer Nathy's question, and I agree with Tony, and again, political will is always the answer, and I think that's also the safe answer. If we can't get it enacted, we can't do anything. But I think we all started, and maybe some of us are continuing our careers as architects designing singular buildings. And then we moved on to urban design and town planning. And at some point along the line, I realized that I was not able to execute the vision that I had because the rules in place would not allow me to do so. And
Right.
Juan did mention that before about planning and zoning that we have to deal with every single day. So, and again, a lot of people on this call do this every day, but we got to change policy. And there are a couple of things that we can do, that we can all do regardless of our position. But, thankfully I was in the public sector for a little while where, I was able to work with the county to write the first health and built environment comp plan element because it didn't exist before. And, that's exactly the type of information that we're using today or need to use today and build within our stated goals of government, that these are the rules that we're going to follow, and that we need to make sure that not only is it exist because it didn't exist before, but implemented and enacted so that our brave public sector employees can use it when it comes to the development of all projects, as opposed to the projects that the three of us may happen to be working on.
Yeah.
Also,
Sorry.
One last thing is with regards to this pandemic is, again, we can use the lessons that we've learned from this and the statistics of people are biking and walking more, people are driving less, etc., because we know these facts to be true. And all of these things with regards to the projects that we've been working on, and it immediately thought of this.
So you froze again.
DA and then the city and the county, which all of the things in the pedestrian priority zone are good for cities, they're good for people, and they would be great for this time.
Yeah. Sorry, Cesar.
Sorry. So, I don't know what you got, but I'll stop talking.
We got.
No, we got the majority. We got the majority of it.
But I have to say, maybe I'm cynical, and you guys already know that about me. I'm cynical about our city in general in many ways. I'm not sure that the comp plan is the place for these policies. Like, we have so many great policies in that comp plan because of the work of our RER department and others. I'm not sure that it's filtered into actual infrastructure or the built environment. I mean, there's a lot of great policies that have been there for 10, 15 years. So, I know it sounds like I'm punting on the question, but the places that we see are successful are those that where staff is given the flexibility to go out and do stuff now. And that's, I think, the most important.
But sorry, I'm back. So the answer is both, right? So if you don't have policy, you can't enact it. So then all we're doing is doing incremental pieces at the time that it's needed to happen. If we have policy and empower staff to move forward, we could do both. And it needs to be all of the above.
True, and I don't disagree with either of you. I think that you're both saying this pretty much the same. The one thing that I'm still questioning, and this, now I'm going to put my APA hat on, we should have a follow-up roundtable here and probably invite more people on this. Mm-hmm. The one question that we haven't tackled, and yes, we've talked about the open space and the urbanism. I saw a question earlier on the chat talking about what's the future of office. That has a huge effect on urbanism and urban planning. And one of the things that we haven't discussed, and there is room for a full webinar on this, what is the future form of the city if hyperdensity is not sought anymore? And we start, are we moving into a sprawl? Are we moving back to sprawl? Are we doing the Burgess's satellite cities and hubs, garden city style with higher density? And then there's a question about how much density. There's a question of where are people going to work, how close to their homes they're going to work, how they're going to get to those live and work and play. How do they interact? And that leaves room to a lot of things. The reason why I mention it now is because you were talking about the comp plan, and even though it's been it's served as well, I think that now is a good time to revisit a lot of the comp plans and see if they're serving us. They're serving us during pandemics. If there's a land use from a mapping standpoint, if there's a need for change, policy changes probably will have to be updated to include new approaches and new market realities. So Cheryl, I'll leave it at that because that's, you know, I'm opening up a huge door.
No, that's a hope, you know, and it's interesting, Juan, because we actually, every Wednesday, we're doing with AIA town halls on different projects. So we're going to do these kind on Fridays and the others on Wednesdays. But we just had a program about offices and but from the design perspective of how things are going to change. And I think the topic of, you know, the land use change and something that's very interesting, and we'll add that to our urban redesign series. We're going to keep doing this, and let's bring in some land use people and continue that discussion. So we have 5 minutes, and what I like, everybody on the chat, feel free to answer each other. It's when you make it to everyone, because we're not going to be able to get to all of these questions, because I want to have one final, these last couple of minutes. I want each of you to tell us what is the most important thing that you want us to take away or to remember from this talk today, and what can we individually do to bring some of these changes about. Juan, you want to wait? Let me get Cesar. Let me let Cesar
Thanks. Before
go first.
So I think it's important, and I think we all talk about this in our professions, that it's all interrelated, right? There's no such thing as separateness. Transportation, zoning, building, sidewalks, people, cars, it's all the same thing. You can't fix one without affecting the other, or change one without affecting the other. And I really see, again, this is an opportunity because of the ability that we figured out that we can work remotely in many situations, not all situations, but many situations. I think the impact of that alone, with transit and transportation and office space and retail stores, and if you're not going downtown for work, that means you're not eating lunch at a downtown restaurant, you're not buying gas at the store. Everything is so interrelated that, and I think in a good way, we're going to be able to rethink the way that we design cities in its totality by what I mentioned at the beginning of this, is maybe we need to think a little bit more decentralized, as opposed to everybody driving from west to east at 9 o'clock and east to west at 5 o'clock, and, you know, ruining that part of the day for everybody. And that's my one big takeaway.
Tony?
You know, I think we're going to have many of the same points, but how cities and the actions that we take over the next 4 months will have implications for the next 40 years. And this can be a culture shift if we let it. And it just has to do with what our values are when we're making those intentional moves. I don't think it's going to mean a move away from the cities. I tend to agree with Bernard's comment here. I wouldn't write off density at all. You know, they said the same thing after 9/11. They said the same thing after the recession. People are always moving away from cities and coming in. That's the nature of the city. And I think it'll be great for the smaller cities, the way that Juan was saying. Our smaller cities need an influx of people, but people are always going to live in cities. This is how we are as a humanity. We live in cities. And it's just a matter of adapting to that and rethinking our idea of resilience, so that it's really resilience against all different types of natural disasters, including pandemics.
Absolutely. Juan?
So I guess we're all talking about density. I'm not writing out density. I am talking about manageable density, and I have a lot of faith in big cities, but I think that we need to start thinking about hubs. And I think that one, especially if we're talking about Miami-Dade, I think that the SMART plan is a great way to move forward, because it provides an organizational future for us, and it gives opportunity for other decentralized areas that are easy to get to, right? And we can create hubs that are walkable, mixed use, that are livable, that are mixed use, so you can work, play, and live in the same hub or in different hubs, but well connected. Well connected leads me to the social connectedness. And I think that now more than ever, we need to be connected. I'll go back to the physical versus social distancing. And finally, the last thought that I will have, that I will mention is, I'm going to go back to I do not want to go back to the normal. We need to learn, we need to move forward, and we need to prepare for the next one. And to prepare for the next one, it means that we need to think about how to live healthy. I'm not talking about viruses now. I'm talking about a healthy community will weather future pandemics a lot better. Providing walkable solutions will make us all better physically and mentally to survive the next one.
Thanks, Juan. I just want to, I'm a stickler on time. It's 1 o'clock. I want to thank all of you for calling in. Thanks, Juan, Tony, and Cesar for your participation. A lively discussion to be continued for sure. And yeah, I look forward to seeing all of you back again. Thank you for your support for MCAD and APA. And we'll see you guys again on another Zoom call. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Bye.
You guys.
Thank you all for joining us, and join us on July 17th for the next in this series. Thank you.